Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, tonight's video is going to be an unscripted and unchained first look at The Good Syma'arian by Venger Satanis. So this is a recent project that Venger Satanis had originally put up on DriveThruRPG. It's an 8-page mini adventure or an adventure module that that he used to put out a message. All right, and this message was in support of the recent brief, let's say, or a projected ruling of the United States Supreme Court as it relates to Roe versus Wade. So it's obviously a very political statement to have been made, and it when it was put on DriveThruRPG, it was, from my understanding, it was put out there as a response to some of the bundles that were put out at the same time, or actually just prior to this being written and published on DriveThruRPG. There were several bundles put out that were in support of Planned Parenthood. That if you purchase the bundle for $5, all of the proceeds would go to Planned Parenthood or other pro-abortion or just pro reproductive rights, if you want to call it that. And so it was certainly in line. This project was certainly in line with the political winds of the time. Now, this is, of course, a couple weeks since this has gone out, and this particular project was removed for purposes of review. So someone had made a complaint about this project, probably without digging very deeply into it, which I am certainly going to do. And I just wanted to give both Venger the opportunity to see, his project reflected in the way that it was, put out there. And, because I haven't seen anyone actually do a review of the project and actually show what the project says, what the adventure actually says or does. And, mostly people have just been kind of talking about the controversy of it being removed for further review. I'm hopeful that it does get put back up there. I think that it was, it was both unnecessary and really quite censorious to have removed it just because someone had complained about it. And you don't see that kind of response to, in the reverse, going from a more conservative or, traditional viewpoint, looking to have things such as these bundles that are supporting a very leftist liberal ideology that's actually generating money for their causes. This here is free. It had been free, and it's it was not intended to do more than just express an opinion and not take a much more active role as it's fundraising for that kind of political message. Now, before I jump into it, I would just say, like, personally myself, I would not have written something for the sole purpose of putting out a political opinion. I tend to keep my politics, specific politics, away from my gaming. Although I certainly come to gaming with a much more traditional or conservative viewpoint, which is why I gravitate towards playing much older games. So the OSR is probably more conservative, or I prefer to say traditional. And when I say traditional, I mean like traditional role playing and traditional role playing games. And so that's my perspective. So that's as political as I get. I don't like taking contemporary political arguments and inserting them into my games. But hey, you know what? Everyone's entitled to their own opinions and what they look to do with their own time and their efforts. And if they want to publish it, they should certainly be allowed to be able to do so. If you don't agree with something, just don't buy it. But to stand up and say, well, I'm going to anonymously file a complaint against something just because you disagree with it, I think is kind of intellectually weak. And it's kind of I don't know, it's kind of a crappy thing to do. It's like I said, it's intellectually weak. It's not very courageous. So let's put it that way. You really can't believe in what you believe in by and support that and have that view respected if you're going to support it solely through the means of trying to diminish or silence opposing views. I think it's, again, just a very weak way of going about it. So, without further ado, let's actually take a look at the adventure itself. So here we have it. We have the Good Sumerian, so a little bit of a play on words. Venger likes to use all these hyphens, and, he is pretty much addicted to them, I believe. Let's see, let's zoom in here. So, a moment in time. This scenario was written to commemorate the historic upending of America's Roe versus Wade abortion case from 1973, the year Dungeons and Dragons conceived. As most people are hopefully aware, the overturning of this legal decision by the United States Supreme Court does not mean abortion is suddenly illegal throughout the country. Rather, limitations and restrictions are kicked back to the individual states so that people can decide for themselves what's to be done about this particular thorny issue. Thank you for actually putting this out there this way. I mean, just based on this statement alone, accurately depicting what the United States Supreme Court is proposing to do. Remember, they haven't done this yet. This was just a leaked draft of where their thought process was leaning towards. Now, I have no doubt that this is probably where they're going to go with it anyway. And maybe even more so now because of the backlash, that has come up against it. I think that they're more likely to move towards a 6-3 decision rather than a 5-4, but that remains to be seen. So the Good Sumerian touches on various political topics referencing the Bible, pop culture, and my own Eldritch Gonzo science fantasy post-apocalyptic campaign setting Chalt. Get the entire trilogy. All right, so a little bit of a plug in there. he does have a trilogy. The third book soon to be released, and it's it really is an interesting setting. So, I highly recommend it. I own the first two. Can't wait to get my the third one to complete the trilogy, and it really is a an interesting take on both tabletop role playing games. As I know that some will say it's not OSR, it's not true OSR, but it certainly is interesting. It certainly is unique, so I recommend it. The adventure is meant for a single session leading right to the action. As always, the number of players and levels. All right, so he goes into a little bit more of just the nuts and bolts of playing the game itself or the adventure itself. So the backstory. Days ago, a sweaty-toothed madman with brindle beard clumped and caked with sand, slime, and blood ran up to the PCs claiming to have spoken with an illustrious order of evil-slaying Templars, none other than the Knights of the Purifying Scourge. All right, and they go through some backstory here, and basically talking about the players are being requested to go up against a demonic cult, and particularly a demonic cult that is looking to sacrifice both the unborn and young children, below the age of 2 or something like that. So we will move on. So we go into the opening, and you continue getting some background information on the scenarios, and of course, I mean, this is a very dark gonzo setting, and so you have all kinds of adult content in Chult and in the depictions here that you'll see. So, but so far, nothing that really comes out as being rated R, let's say. So this is still very much within the lines of maybe a strong, well, not quite a PG-13, but probably around the PG or NC-17 kind of rating here. So, like I said, not quite R, but certainly adult. And there's mentions of prostitution and drugs and crime and gladiatorial spectacles and such. So violence. Again, a very dark setting, gonzo setting, both a mixture of science fiction and fantasy. So we continue on looking through, and the two cities are named after Sodom and Gomorrah, basically. So he is throwing in quite a few references of, just different connections to whether it be religious connections or real world connections and so on. So one of the payments for sacrificing these children is 30 pieces of gold. I'm really quite surprised that he didn't do like 30 pieces of silver instead of gold, just to throw in another reference there as well. So the caravans. So it starts off with a caravan, and as far as the eye can see, humanoids stream their way to what's left of Sodom. Many in the caravan walk with at least one child or visibly pregnant. So these are the people heading towards the stronghold of the cult. And these are the various encounters that the PCs might happen upon. All right, so they might see a crying baby carried with ill regard for the child by a human mercenary type wearing black sleeveless jacket, matching eye patch and ammo strapped to his leg. There might be two elves, male and female, walking side by side. The male elf holds a burlap sack over his shoulder. Infant cries can be heard, as well as the movement within the sack, obviously. So these are all like things that the player characters can actually see. And so you, as the game master, can include one of these, two of these, multiple of these, within the same caravan, and then the players can choose to respond in some way. In virtually every case, they are going to, or they're expected to, jump to the rescue. The hook. No one heeds the demon. In fact, he is ridiculed, mocked, and spat upon by the caravan determined to murder small children for short-lived prosperity. The demon's name is Dileth, and he hails from Samaria. Samaria is a day and a half journey north of both Sodom and Gomorrah. The city of Samaria is considered prosperous, safe, and in alignment with the gods, which is why it's been an easy target for the wicked cities for decades. However, Samaria has a mystical force field protecting it from constant aggression from the collective shitholes of Sodom and Gomorrah. However, terrorists still occasionally sneak their way into Samaria, committing atrocities in order to make the citizens of that prosperous city fearful. So, it's a continuing battle between basically these three cities. Samaria being the one that appears to be the good guys, let's say, and then the other two are clearly the aggressors in this case. So he includes in this here on the road. So there is a chart, a D12 chart. It takes about an hour to reach the ruins of Sodom. Along the way, adventurers may encounter one or more of the following. And so you'll roll a D12, and there could be a number of different, encounters that take place. Once again, almost all of them are kind of asking for the players to do the right thing here. So again, your characters are involved in a heroic fantasy, or in this case, a gonzo, fantasy, and there's a variety of things here that they're doing. They are never participating in the in the slaughter of these children. So they're always being looked to, go out there and protect or rescue these captives. We get into approaching the ruins. I remember I read one passage here where they talked about where Venger talks about a statue to a criminal that gets struck down by lightning from the wrath of the gods, and if you're familiar, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to a mural that was put up in in a Wisconsin town or something, kind of glorifying George Floyd. and it had gotten struck by lightning and destroyed the mural that was put up. And so I forget exactly where it was in this here, but he does make a reference to that, and it was really kind of funny. I laughed when I first read it because I was like, he's really pushing some of those buttons, of those on the left. And again, it's tongue in cheek, and it's not as I certainly don't see anything that is really objectionable here. It's again, it's meant to be a heroic rescue kind of adventure here. All right, so it goes on. So here's some of your encounters. So this looks like some kind of an arachnid entity that you will do combat. You can see the system that he uses is very, very simple system. So it's a 7 hit die, 1 attack. Attack bonus gets a +4. Its damage does a D12. Hit points, AC, and saving throws. That's all the characters or the creatures or whatever you're facing. Those are the only 3 stats that they actually have. So very, very simplistic approach, minimalist almost, in the system that he uses. And it is really, so streamlined that it works really well. It lends itself to a cinematic kind of gameplay, especially if you use some of his other mechanics that he introduced, like the Crimson Escalation, where you have critical hits that kind of evolve over the span of 11 rounds, where you start with a D2, a 20 on a D20 is a critical hit, then a 19 and 20 the next round, and then 18 to 20 following, and so on, until you get to a critical hit on 11 through 20. So nearly a 45% chance of of scoring a critical hit, and then it resets if anything actually survives that long. So you have human slaves, and you can see the comparison between, let's say, Mazog and a human slave. Quite considerably different stats and in comparison. And then we get down here to a few more characters or monsters or just entities that you might encounter and have to fight. So that's pretty much it. I mean, your player characters are following along with one of these caravans, looking to get to the site of the demonic cult, and destroying them, crushing them. So let me switch views here. So overall, it's a fairly simple scenario, and I would call it that. It's certainly a scenario. It's really meant to be a one shot. Just one during one session. Very much in line with the Gonzo, fantasy technology aspect that Venger uses in his Chalt campaign setting. And like I said, it's really not that offensive in any way. It just has a particular political view that some people might disagree with, and it certainly does not deserve to be removed from drive-through. But if that's ultimately what they decide, he will certainly make it possible for you to get hold of this. It was initially put out for free. I mean, it's a PDF, so it's very easy for him to respond to anyone's request to get a copy of the PDF, and then they can get a copy of it. Once you have the PDF, you can always convert it to a, using Lulu and convert it to a soft cover if you wish. But it's only 8 pages long, so it's certainly not something that is all that ink intensive to, even though it is full color everywhere. It wouldn't cost you very much just to print out a copy of it yourself. So once again, I hope you like this video. I know this is, something that, is somewhat controversial, but I don't think anyone actually has gone through and actually done a walkthrough of just the 8 pages alone. And I mean, I certainly didn't go into full detail of it. I didn't want to spoil too much of it, but I think if you focus on that first 2 or 3 paragraphs where he's writing his reasoning behind creating this, and like I said, he accurately laid out what that court case is about, and what it does and what it does not do, which is very important. So again, I'm happy to have gotten it. I'm happy to have reviewed it and showed it in a light that no one else has so far. So I'm sure that he will continue to get negative press on this, but hopefully people will see this and take it for what I intend it to be, is just to give it a fair, looking at, and that way you can judge for yourself. Do you want this? Then, you'll have the means of getting it. If you don't want it, you don't want any parts of it for whatever reason, you might just say, you know what, I don't like to include politics in my gaming, and so I'm just going to leave it alone. Or like me, you could take a look at this and say, well, you know what, I'm going to remove part of the politics from it that I'm, not really concerned about, and I will take the idea of these, various parts of this scenario and still utilize it in my own game. You could certainly do that as well. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments section. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And once again, I always look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. I had to postpone my previous normal game schedule for Tuesday, and going to pick that up again on Friday, tomorrow. So that way we still stay to our weekly agenda of running AD&D First Edition every single week for the past. We're going into week 42 now. So we've been going very strong with that campaign, and I'm looking forward to pick it up. And I will see you over the weekend, probably with a couple other videos. And you all have a great weekend upcoming. Take care.